To learn more about earning college credits with study hall courses, go to gostudyhall.com or click the link in the description. We all have family traditions, passed down from generation to generation. Languages, recipes, and even the holidays we celebrate. But what happens when my great-grandmother's secret recipe for the best chocolate cake ever, with the secret ingredient of coconut oil, meets my other great-grandmother's recipe for the other best chocolate cake ever, now with sour cream? As a descendant of both these traditions, I might try to combine them to make a super-duper best chocolate cake ever, now using both coconut oil and sour cream. These traditions have met and evolved through me with pretty tasty results. And on a much bigger scale, that's just about what happened when Europeans, enslaved Africans, and indigenous peoples shared close quarters during the period of colonization in the 1500s and 1600s. And they were swapping around more than just recipes. See, colonizers from Europe sailed on over across the Atlantic and just set up shop in the Americas. They were dead set on profiting off the natural resources of the continents like silver, gold, coffee, and sugarcane, with little mind to the indigenous peoples already living there. These colonizers had their own cultures and ideas and toted them along to a country that was already rich with indigenous ones. The European settlement of the Americas led to a blend of these cultures and societies that would ultimately create distinctly new ones. Today we call them Creole cultures, and the story of how they came to be is anything but straightforward. My name is Rob Fuller, and this is Study Hall, Modern World History. When you hear the word Creole, you might think of shrimp boats and Louisiana swamps. But it's important to know that there is no single unified Creole culture or people. The word is used to refer to many different cultures that developed during the age of European colonization. While many Creole cultures evolved in the Americas, some can be found on the islands off the coast of Africa and in the Indian Ocean, far from the places that most people think of as Creole. But they all have some important stuff in common. All Creole cultures are hybrid cultures created through Creolization, or the culture swap between Europeans, Africans, and other indigenous peoples. When these people were put together in close proximity, their traditions and backgrounds blended and fused, creating new cultures. Take New Orleans, Louisiana. It was originally the home to a number of indigenous Americans like the Chichimacha, Choctaw, and Natchez. Then, in 1717, the French government decided to build New Orleans up into a port city, bringing in European fur traders, French merchants, and enslaved Africans to live among the indigenous Americans. In 1763, Spain took over the city, now mixing Spanish residents with the plentiful, rich cultures that already called New Orleans home. Then in 1803, after being briefly returned to France, New Orleans was purchased by the United States. I wonder what the return policy is for a whole city. In the midst of all of that, people had children, as people tend to do. Some were thoroughly Spanish or thoroughly indigenous, but many were from parents of different races. Those children were neither French nor African, neither indigenous nor Spanish. They were something new, a mix of all the parent cultures that swirled about their Louisiana home. They were Creole. And this process was happening all over. In 1532, a group of Spanish conquistadors invaded what is now Lima, Peru, home to the Inca Empire. The conquistadors, led by a guy named Pizarro, mounted a violent campaign to take power from the Inca. Pizarro succeeded, and the Spanish officially established the city of Lima in 1535. However, the indigenous people and their culture didn't just disappear. Lima was still filled with Incas and other indigenous Peruvians, their traditions, and their languages. But what to call the children born under the Spanish control of Lima? They weren't Spaniards exactly, but they weren't Inca either. So they were called, you guessed it, Creole, which translated to someone who is native to here. But even more variations of this story existed across the globe. Because the details of each Creole culture are so specific to their place in parent cultures, there are a lot of ways to be Creole. Take the Spanish-speaking Creoles. These people come from the Viceroyalty of New Spain, a colony centered around Mexico that extended as far north as California and as far south as Panama, and included all of the Spanish-claimed islands like Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. In these places, the Spanish government created a sort of racial hierarchy known as the casta system. In the casta system, the word Creole was used to refer specifically to white people whose ancestors were European, but who were born in the Americas, and so weren't fully European themselves. These Spanish Creoles were banned from certain positions in the government, the military, and the church because of their mixed culture. Meanwhile, in other parts of the world, the word Creole was very clearly meant for children of mixed racial heritage. In North America, mid-Atlantic states grew cotton and tobacco, profiting off the labor of enslaved Africans as well as indentured servants from Europe. And as they labored together, the intermingling of these groups led to the creation of the Gullah Creoles there in North Carolina. And halfway around the world in the Indian Ocean, the Seychelles Creoles evolved in the 115-island nation known as the Seychelles. These islands were under the control of many different European nations at different times, and were populated not only by European colonizers, but also East Africans, indigenous islanders, and migrants from India, China, and Malaysia. But despite their differences, all of these versions of Creolization had some important things in common. In all of these cases, European colonizers disrupted the traditions of indigenous cultures through the introduction of their own languages, heritage, and traditions. In all these cases, these Europeans brought laborers by force to work on plantations, introducing yet more diverse cultures into the mix. And in all of these cases, rather than fading out, these different cultures grew into one another, creating new generations of multicultural people specific to their place and diverse cultural heritage. However, Creole is not simply an ethnic identity, but also an important form of cultural resistance to European colonization. In all of these interactions, it's important to pay attention to the power dynamics involved. All of this came about because wealthy Europeans invaded and conquered indigenous Americans, forcibly displaced and enslaved Africans, and profited off the unpaid, involuntary labor of both of these groups. These Europeans also established themselves as the leaders of the new governments they created, along with the legal framework for their authority that enforced not only their political supremacy, but also their cultural supremacy, as they saw it, as well. However, while it's easy enough to create laws, it's much harder to change cultures. While Europeans tried to impose their values, cultures, and even religious festivals on these peoples, Africans, Asians, and indigenous peoples reshaped them, combining European traditions with their own. This process of blending and combining separate cultures into one new culture is called transculturation, which more or less is just another word for Creolization. Take religion. Both the Spanish and the French practiced Catholicism, and were determined to impose these beliefs on the territories there in the Americas, even going so far as to outlaw certain other traditional religions. However, despite this legal pressure, many indigenous Americans and enslaved Africans would not abandon their cultures, and instead incorporated aspects of Christianity into their own religions, thereby creating new systems and traditions and celebrations. Maybe you've heard of Carnival, a season of public celebration that includes parades, performances, and parties. There are Carnival celebrations all over the world, but some of the most famous come from the Creole cultures in Brazil and other South American countries. The story of Carnival all started with European Catholics in the late medieval era. For these Catholics, Lent was a holiday of self-denial. It began as a holiday of fasting in which one would only eat one meal per day, and this evolved into the more familiar holiday of abstention, in which people are expected to give up vices for a full 40 days. So the day before Lent was a celebration of those things, a day of drinking, singing, dancing, eating, all that good stuff. When the Spanish and French brought this tradition over to the Americas, the indigenous and African peoples incorporated their own dances and music into the festivities. Dances like the kalinda drew elements from traditional dances in Central Africa, while samba music likewise drew from ritual African drumming, and in the Pernambuco region of Brazil, groups who performed maracatu, an Afro-Brazilian performance style, would also participate in Carnival. Similarly, the Mexican holiday, the Day of the Dead, is a fusion of Christian and indigenous cultures. While the Day of the Dead began as a traditional Aztec and Mexican celebration, Catholic priests hoped to ease the process of religious conversion by just doubling up the holiday, with the Christian All Saints' Day going along with it. By aligning traditional indigenous celebrations and beliefs with Christian holidays and saints, perhaps it would be easier to convert people to Catholicism, right? But the indigenous people held fast to their traditions, and the result was a new celebration with its own unique traditions. Skulls, known as zompatli, were a common motif in Mesoamerican cultures. After the arrival of the Spanish, these were swapped over for sugar skulls, now one of the most recognizable aspects of Day of the Dead celebrations, along with ofrendas, the shrines people built in their homes as offerings to family members who have passed away. However, transculturation was not always a melting pot of music, dance, and parties, and this tension was apparent in the way European Catholicism often clashed with the belief systems of the people they colonized. When enslaved Africans were brought to the French and Spanish colonies, many were forced to convert to Catholicism. But instead of abandoning their heritage, these Africans combined elements of Catholicism with elements of their traditional faiths, leading to the creation of things like Santeria in Cuba and Voodoo in Haiti and Louisiana. These two religions are similar in many ways. Both evolved from polytheistic African traditions, with Voodoo evolving directly from Vodun, a West African religion built around the spirits of earth, nature, and human society. And while Santeria's origins are a bit murkier, it's thought to have its roots in the Yoruba religion of West Africa and, like Vodun, revolves around the worship of multiple deities called orishas. The multiple gods worshipped in these traditional religions then blended with the worship of multiple Catholic saints, and so Voodoo and Santeria were born. In both of these Creole religions, people believed that you could ask the gods for favors by performing rituals, or by giving the gods gifts like animal sacrifices, and both developed in secrecy for two important reasons. First, while the Catholic Church was willing to accept sweet sugar skulls and ofrendas, the polytheism and animal sacrifices practiced in Voodoo and Santeria were just too different for these traditional Catholics and were seen as heretical. The second reason is less about the religions themselves and much more about the people who were practicing them. Since most of the worshippers of these faiths were enslaved Africans, the idea of large meetings of enslaved people calling to gods to protect them kind of freaked out European enslavers. So as a means of control and to prevent potential revolts before they even started, these Europeans actually forbid large gatherings of enslaved people, period. As these religions and traditions exist today, and exist they do, they can be seen as both a time capsule of the vast migration and colonization of this specific moment in history, but also a testament to the determination and staying power of long-held beliefs and traditions. All of these specific aspects of Creole culture, from Carnival to Voodoo, from Samba to Sugar Skulls, were shaped by the unique circumstances of place and time, the merging of cultures in that exact location at that exact moment. Each of these communities is made up of different people with different values and visions. Each of them creates a culture not just distinct from Afro-Eurasia, but distinct from the other new cultures around it. So, while we have no single definition for the word Creole, that is in many ways by design. After all, Creole, or Criollo, is Spanish for the people who are native to here. And every here is unique. If you're enjoying Study Hall Modern World History and are interested in taking an online course and earning college credit, go to gostudyhall.com or click on this button to learn more. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.